So good morning, everyone. Happy Friday, last day. We made it. Who was at karaoke last night? Who was singing at karaoke last night? So we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about the Horizon Report, which does anybody not know what the Horizon Report is? Could you leave, please? Okay, one person. That's great. So the Horizon Report is a report on technology in education and interpretation in the museum community. It's based on a long track record of Horizon Reports in higher education and the library community. It's called Horizon because it's looking at trends, challenges, and technologies over 3 horizons of 0 to 1 years, 2 to 3 years, and 4 to 5 years. So for you, there you go. Okay. We offered the bribe of real hardcore, hardcore. What was that about?
Oh. Thank you, Nick.
That was Bourbon Street last night. So I don't think I have enough for everyone, but you can download it. So like I said, Alex is going to kind of take control, but we're going to do this a little different, and we're going to focus on one topic, which is really virtual reality, and just have a conversation about hype or not, yay or nay. So over to Alex.
All right. Well, thank you, Nick. You can download the PDF of this report at this link right here, go.nmc.org, 2016-museum. If you are one of the people at the back of the room and are not going to get a copy of the hard copy. So I'm going to walk quickly into kind of the 18 topics that make up the report. So the way that the report is generated, who has served on an expert panel for our Horizon Report? Anyone okay.
Sweet.
A couple of you in the room,
you.
yeah. So the way that we conduct our research is we use a Delphi process, which means we bring a bunch of smart people together, they have a conversation, they do a series of voting that helps us come up with the 18 topics that end up in the report. And so I'm the editor and co-author of the report. There's a writing team, and we take those 18 topics and just dive right in. So here's a nifty infographic that kind of summarizes the report in a really nice digestible way. As Nick mentioned, we have challenges, trends, and developments in technology that we focus on in the report. So there's 3 different sections. Looking at challenges, we have those that are solvable, which we define as we can define the problem and we know how to solve it. We just need to go out and do it. Difficult means that we can define the problem, but we have yet to find the solution on how to solve that. And a wicked challenge is something that we have a hard time defining, let alone solving. So you'll see that the solvable are developing effective digital strategies. I see that a lot within the MCN, different sessions on digital strategy. So it's just really just going about and implementing those. Within difficult, we look at measuring the impact of new technologies. You have this new thing that you're doing. How do you go about making sure that has a good impact? And then wicked are things like privacy concerns. These are things that are impeding progress within technology adoption within museums. So privacy is definitely one of those. Within trends, we look at short-term trends, those that are part of our conversation right now and will be for a very short amount of time before we move on to other topics. And long-term are things that we've been talking about for quite some time, and we will continue to talk about them. So cross-institution collaboration, that's not going to go away. New roles for museum professionals, roles are shifting. Within developments in technology, we have 3 different adoption horizons, 1 year or less, 2 to 3 years, and 4 to 5 years. So maker spaces, lots of maker spaces are happening. And when we look at these timelines, we look at adoption rates as 20%. So 20% of museums globally adopting these as being a mainstream. So that's how we come up with that. As Nick mentioned, we're going to kind of dive into this VR topic because it's a really interesting development in technology that some people are really bullish on and some people are panning. So I think what we're going to do is take some time to kind of have a discussion about where we see VR, and right now we have it in the 2 to 3 year horizon. Before we do that, I want to kind of point to you to another, are you familiar with Gartner's research at all? Yeah, so Gartner has a hype cycle, which is a way of kind of looking at, this is for education. So looking at when an innovation comes out, you have a trigger, you have a peak of expectations, Then you have a trough of disillusionment, which is a great name for a metal band. And then a slope of enlightenment is what you want to see happen. But some technologies, as you can see in the bottom right, are obsolete before they plateau into a plateau of productivity. So right now, as of July 2016, Gartner has placed virtual reality and augmented reality still on an upward slope. So I just wanted to kind of use that as a frame of reference. Virtual reality, to define it, refers to computer-generated environments that simulate the physical presence of people and objects and realistic sensory experiences. So let's kick this off, Nick, with a little talk about VR. Do you think that 2 to 3 years is a legitimate place for VR within museums?
Yes.
Yes.
No. You know, I'm a little skeptical, and I'm skeptical because there's no question that it creates some fantastic experiences. And I don't know if anyone read the New York Times article, and maybe some of you had downloaded the Displaced 360 VR. How many people did that? And was it? I was reading the comments on the article, and a bunch of people were brought to tears watching it. So clearly there is a massive potential to create some really compelling experiences. My skepticism is just in the production for that, particularly in the museum community. And yes, you can get the larger the museums can afford the production of this stuff, and there's a correspondence between I think the quality of the experience and the production costs. So it seems to me we're in the same kind of place that we were for gaming. 5 years ago, gaming was going to revolutionize the museum experience, pitted against, all these massive billion-dollar industries, and it didn't really take off in that kind of bell curve of experiences in museums. So I'm just wondering whether, and again, this is a conversation that we want you to contribute to. I'm just a little skeptical about the mass adoption.
I'm seeing kind of a convergence of different trends happening this is my 4th year working on the Horizon Report. And gaming is definitely one of them. One of the sessions I went to, they said, well, it's just, VR is really, entertainment and gaming is where that's taking off. And I'm like, well, why can't that be part of a museum experience? If it's, if that's, getting into an artwork, being able to be immersive is an interesting way of having gaming bring up VR. And the other thing that I saw at this at MCN was the idea of photogrammetry. So photogrammetry, 3D scanning, is creating all of this data, all of these, it started with objects, now we're, drones are scanning spaces. And so you're having this build up of these spaces. So, it seems like a natural progression beyond just 3D printing to actually use these spaces to walk into. So I see a couple of trends converging with it that are going to help push VR into the mainstream.
So who here is anybody doing some VR experiences? And are they kind of exhibition based? Are they permanent collection? Are they
permanent collection? We had a donor in Kansas City give us 30 impressionist paintings, and we did a VR capture of them in his home before they show up in the gallery. So if you see a painting in the gallery, you can put on the mask and see what is hanging in their home.
So what device are you using for the delivery of that?
It's a Gear VR.
Okay.
Some Samsung S7s, but we're leaning more toward VR being a way to visit the museum when you're away from the museum. It doesn't scale well inside the museum, one at a time.
Right.
If people don't like putting on headphones because they're germaphobic, the whole gear that you have to put on.
And that's my other skepticism is just, as Doug said, the people have a hard time putting earbuds in and headphones. So putting this thing over their eyes that somebody else may have just worn is, what did you say, Matt? It stinks? Sneezed into. Thanks for that visual for a Friday morning. So, there's some prohibitive cost in just the delivery mechanism. And again, this is why I'm a little skeptic. And then, the devices that you're gonna use. I was also reading about Magic Leap. So if you're familiar with Magic Leap, $4.5 billion investment into some kind of virtual reality delivery. They just announced that they'll be launching a consumer product very soon. And the description is that it looks like just regular eyeglasses, and it is actually projecting images directly onto your retina, which is a little scary. See? What could possibly go wrong, says Ed. So if you're familiar with Magic Leap, there's kind of a classic, that whale breaching in the gymnasium. That's the Magic Leap, folks. I mean, some clearly awesome stuff. But is how many skeptics in the room when you kind of put all this together of the delivery, the high production costs, the high cost of the delivery devices, how many skeptics in the room?
Wow.
I know that it's expensive.
I was going to say, I feel like you're making a lot of assumptions.
Okay.
Asking a leading question
Excellent.
in a way. I mean, I'm just saying, like, to say how many of you are skeptical that it's too expensive and it's all these things. I think there are ways you can do that. I talked to the Franklin Institute yesterday. I don't know if anyone from the Franklin Institute is here, but they have a new setup on their floor that they built for under $5,000, and they're using iPod touches and these really simple headsets that are $15 a piece. And it's just a way to like do an extra thing in their science museum that adds to it. We also got some Samsung Gear VR, but we're using them off-site in a small pilot where we are letting kids who can't get to the aquarium get to experience a 360 video of our exhibit off-site at a park district location in the hopes that someday they'll come, but being able to bring the aquarium to them. I don't necessarily think you have to just buy in hook, line, and sinker, but until we know more and until we wait for the price on these things to come down more, like you can get a 360 camera for a couple $100 and be able to pilot something and try something out. So just throwing it out
The
there.
Theta S.
Yeah, that's what
in
we
that
have. It's like
price
$300.
range. We looked into the cost of having those robots take somebody
Yeah.
through a museum.
Right?
And the idea of putting a Theta S on a selfie stick and walking that through the museum and letting somebody at home either through YouTube doing the panning or put up cardboard. So I think there are a whole bunch of ways you can go with VR that are not expensive at all.
Okay.
We're putting an exhibition up on the Cultural Institute. It's just a little bit of photography to get that room in 360 and have that be a part of that exhibition at the Cultural Institute. And people who have cardboard can actually visit the room and look around in the room. I think all of that stuff is very inexpensive. It's in that experimental phase. And again, it's in that part of letting people come to the museum that are far away, who can't make it physically. I think that's VR's better role.
So the promise is to deliver this stuff off-site. That's where you think where you see it going.
And the scaling is not a problem.
Okay.
In the back.
I guess my main skepticism is I don't go to the museum to see the walls of the museum. I go to see the art. When we put in the museum, I want to be experiencing the art in a different way. And a lot of the things I see are just recreating sterile spaces and pictures. I spend a lot of money creating virtual environments of tomorrow.
I agree. So I agree that what kind of reality are you trying to make virtual? Are you trying to just recreate the space that you're walking through? Because that, it may work for, just drumming up some potential future visitors. But I think the real interest is what I just showed, is being able to be a more immersive, being able to walk into a painting or walk into an artwork. I think that's where some of that, where you're going to have something that you can't really get within a museum that you're going to be able to get with some of the VR stuff. So I just showed the Bruegel work here that Google Cultural Institute created. I mean, that's for me, that's more interesting, and that's more a trend that we see within society of having more active learning experiences. Being very passive, you can look at an artwork. That's the very passive. That's like watching TV. But if you can have a choice on points of view and perspective, those are things that are we're beginning to expect more and more. I'm glad that you brought up the Franklin Institute. I sat in that session, or the informal talk yesterday, and they're not even creating their own content. They're just using what's available that relates to what's happening in the museum. So any kind of scientific things that relate thematically to what they're doing, they're using.
There was a question, gentleman there.
We did
Scott.
a VR project, VR in July, and I'd say for the use of VR for skeptics, part of it comes down to really the concept of curation. They're a great tool for creating empathy. So if it's the poetic moment you're trying to create, if it's transporting someone to Guatemala, shameless plug, then that works really well. I think the one thing, the challenge is similar to within the organization is when you launch a VR project, you're facing the same uphill battle that you do with a lot of digital engagement projects,
right.
digital literacy within the organization. We'd have successive volunteer and internal staff training sessions where it's how many people have tried VR, and for many of them it was their first time. And
right.
there's plenty of bad VR experiences. So it's really important that we, as a community, when we think about when we're creating VR education tools or experiences, it's not
do good stuff.
virtual reality for the sake of recreating a museum, like
right.
nobody.
Pointless. Yeah.
There's lots of ways you can get it done without having to put in a single experience like that.
Right.
We actually want to tell a meaningful story and create impact. Sound and vision and spatial.
So fully immersive. Yeah. So Ryan, you had your hand up.
Yeah,
Right.
A lot of you probably have your Museum Street View already.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. You can do a VR experience pretty easy through the Cultural Institute. We did one. We had our educators repurpose a gallery tour through our First Peoples galleries, and our school visits are expensive. There's a lot of schools that can't afford to come to the museum. So for us, it didn't cost us anything to produce, and we can deliver content to schools that so it made sense for us. I know it's not like it's on gear or anything like that, but for us, it ticked a few boxes for us.
So Ed, you had a.
Yeah, so my own personal experience of trying to figure out what the problem VR is trying to solve is really only like in the past year, I would say, gotten to a point where I've had the experience of being able to not have long conversations about the technology itself and really what is the story we're trying to tell with the technology. And the difference has been switching from trying to talk about recreating the museum, like
Right.
bringing the museum out has always been a very hard sell, personally for me. But bringing the world in to the museum, so bringing things in that are literally impossible to show otherwise, like we're investigating doing VR experience for an upcoming Georgia O'Keeffe show, because if you haven't actually been to Abiquiu and been able to stand out in the middle of the desert and look around, you don't really have the same kind of insight into her work that you would have otherwise. So VR, bam, it's a 5-minute conversation, done, make it work, as opposed to years and years and years of trying to sell it otherwise. In terms of skepticism, Alex, how many years has VR been on the 2 to 3 to 3 to 5 years?
Well, AR has been in the report pretty much every year that I've worked on it, except for this year. So we were talking about that. Is AR here because we're talking about VR now?
Well, Alex had a quote last night about even his grandma knows the term augmented reality, which means it probably has arrived. And there's been some. I mean, you're seeing some compelling AR experiences that are pretty simple, just creating that interpretive layer. So, Marit, you had your hand up.
Yeah. One of the sort of epiphanies for me with VR was at a conference in London last year, where one of the big sort of natural history museums had partnered with BBC and David Attenborough.
Jolly good.
To dive down into the Great Barrier Reef and do a VR experience that could reach out to everyone who visited the museum, but also online. And one of the points of doing that was to try and preserve the natural habitat of the coral reef, because it's being overused, overdived by tourists. And by creating and capturing this experience, it could sort of potentially take some of the load off the people who physically visit and recreate that experience. And so there's a preservational potential in VR that I think we rarely highlight, and which is maybe one of the more sort of ethical things we should think about in this.
So kind of the antithesis of what we use technology in the museum world to bring people to the physical experience, use it to stop people damaging cultural heritage.
Yeah, both preserving cultural and natural heritage, but also democratizing the experience, because not every person on planet Earth will have the money and the possibility to go to these wonderful places. But with technology, more people can.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, then you can think of the places that you can't really visit or are hard to visit, you know, or digitally created environments. You know, if we're, you know, looking at blood cells and going inside of veins, those are environments that we can't really get into unless we have virtual experiences.
Any more thoughts? The gentleman in the check shirt had his hand up.
Oh, I was going to make the same point about AR and mixed reality and VR and thinking, do we think of them as sort of the same kind of, same, you know, kind of expectation type, or think of them differently? I think AR, you know, is used to more or less deliver information, and VR is experiential. Mixed reality for museums is kind of maybe just creating ideas.
Right.
And the second thought was just with VR, it seems to me like this is a great project for an artist to find a, you know, innovative use for, because then we might find that sort of mirrored room or something like that where you're in a non-museum space within the museum.
Well, we had that conversation last night about in last year's Horizon Report, artists as what was the term? Artists as creators, digital creators. So original, getting artists to create original digital works of art and what the potential in the VR space might be.
Yeah, I think there's lots of, like the Night Cafe, I don't know if you're familiar with this, Van Gogh, but this is a great example of where somebody can take this two-dimensional object and really be creative with it. You know, it's not...
It disappeared. Oh, no,
It's being able to walk into a painting, I think, is a really compelling thing. And somebody has to invent that, because you can't tell what's behind. If you're looking at a painting, you can't, you know, you can judge how far something is from, but you can't see what's behind something. So this is a great example of where you could actually have this new type of experience with an artwork, where you're, and somebody's going to have to create that. So an artist is going to have to come in and make this type of content. But I think it's an interesting way of looking at a two-dimensional surface and how you can be more immersive within it.
So if you read that Magic Leap report, I think it was today, they claimed that experience is actually detecting spatial, you know, the whole spatial map, and it can actually project in real time objects in between objects in your field of view, so kind of make them disappear behind you know, your sofa or that fancy armchair in the front here. Any more thoughts?
Over there?
Scott?
The other thing to think about is sort of how it folds into your digital content strategy or your education strategy, because the nice thing too about VR exhibits is if you're doing a high-end version, whether that's a HTC Vive or a Gear VR, you can do a low-end Google Cardboard for iTunes and Android, and long after the exhibit is closed, it's still a learning object that if you run education programming, then your educators, teachers in schools can use it as part of the toolkit.
Right.
So it can have really long legs if you do it right.
Mike?
I think one interesting way to look at this is it's really got two sides to the coin, and one is the way that the CMHR is using it, which is essentially 360-degree journalism, and immersive journalism. But the other side is essentially the rendered world. You're creating a fantasy world that the gamers would do, and you're immersing yourselves in that. So that's kind of the two sides of the coin that are interesting for us in the museum world, like which side we want to be on, or which do we use.
Yeah, are you on the entertainment? Yeah. It's kind of like that photogrammetry conservation side versus the more entertainment gaming side. I mean, those are both pathways to be for VR.
I just wanted to read one of the comments of this piece, the displaced, because it kind of, you know, we deal with this issue of bringing people into our organizations that have, you know, I think it was said before, no experience with the technology. So just one of these comments on here, it says, any first use of new tech has a learning curve, but this one was very short. So just the delivery of the Google Cardboard and downloading that, this journalism 360 VR film. But this one was very short and the experience is just stunning. Most interesting to me was that by the end of the 11 minutes, I wasn't focused on the awesome tech anymore at all, just the sense of being right there with those kids. It made me cry, which no news story has ever done before. There's proof enough for me that this is no gimmick. Anybody had a comment like that in the galleries? It's kind of really powerful stuff.
I mean, we did, the first time we showed kids a very low budget pilot of getting to visit our exhibits, kids who hadn't come to the aquarium before, the exact quote was, "This is the coolest thing I've ever done." And I mean, they're like 10 years old. And hopefully we can make it an even better experience and get a better camera, get better stuff, but having a kid say that and get to feel like they got to do something amazing that was connected with your institution, I think is big.
doesn't feel like a fad, so I guess I would encourage people to begin playing with it. There are great YouTubes out there where filmmakers are talking about how you do storytelling in 360, and we have a whole bunch of learning that we have to go through before we get good at this, and so this is kind of the practice time before we figure out how it's actually going to work.
Matt, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, just, I think eventually, right, 15 years or so, and everybody's sort of doing this, I think what you're describing is a real business case for a museum experience case, but I think, to me, this is one of those things that like, the web touches some large percentage of our visitors, like, but then as you go down the scale, like, you know, our app touches 5% of people coming through, you know, and this is even smaller than that, we're sub-second, you know what I mean? So, it's just like an admission to ourselves that, like, there's no longer one product. Like, this will never be, not for 10 years, right? This will never be 80% of our visitors. It will be 2% and 3% and 4%. So let's not try to place it against some success metrics that make it seem like a failure when it's not. And then just because I'm a nerd and moving on anatomy, like, I really bristle at the use of VR to describe both immersive 360 video and generated worlds where you can move through. So I think like we can talk to the public about it, like VR or whatever, but like I think when we talk to each other, we should talk about captured VR as in captured video versus generated world, because the stories are very different. You can tell the uses are very different. They're two art forms, you know what I mean? Like they're just so different that the only similarity is the same equipment to view it on.
So Deb, I can't believe you don't have an opinion.
Well, you're mad at me, I'm sorry. So I just want to say...
You shouldn't be so expressive.
I'm sorry, your name's Man. I'm sorry, I think that what you said is absolutely right. I think it echoes what Mike Mallon said earlier about understanding what the worlds are that we're bringing to our visitor. But my point is, in talking about your percentages of how much percentage of the audiences are, I think we have to get out of our own channels. Because if the New York Times sent every subscriber a pair of cardboard glasses, which some percentage got tossed in the trash, probably, but people put them on, and they mostly have smartphones, and they already have that distribution channel, why are we as museums not knocking on the door of New York Times and saying, can we be part of that channel?
Right.
Because we have to start being where people are, not expecting the old school, which is you come to our door. So if we have compelling content, like I think the Whitney Plantation should be part of every American history curriculum, no matter where you teach it. And where is that VR experience of the Whitney Plantation that I as a teacher can plug in, no matter if I'm teaching 6th grade or undergraduate, like that's where we need to be as an institution. We need to be where the content is needed and stop thinking about gateways to get people on feet.
So in response, we are certainly talking in their times. They have done that, but I think anybody should talk to people who are cultural students, because that's their solving that problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's just another
Expeditions,
channel.
like student expeditions is amazing if you've never done it. Hand out a bunch of gear or a bunch of cardboard devices, and then the teacher has a tablet and is guiding these immersive video experiences. It's fantastic, and it absolutely is a platform that you can simply fill with your stuff. I'm a huge fan of platform. Video strategy equals YouTube, you know.
All right, I think that's the end of our time, Nick.
I'm afraid so. So free copies now that you've suffered all the way through. Please come and get one. If you don't get one, I'm very, very sorry.
So we're taking a break with the Horizon Report in 2017 and hoping to come back in 2018. So if any of you know of a potential sponsor or funder, we'd love to talk to you.